Hello and welcome to today's training industry webinar, Learning When You Need It, Continuous Upskilling and Reskilling for the Modern Workplace, sponsored by Cypher Learning. I'm Elizabeth Parker, Marketing and Event Manager here at Training Industry, and I'm so happy you decided to take some time out of your day to be with us. Before we get started, I do have just a few housekeeping items to review that will help you get the most out of your time with us. Throughout today's event, please feel free to chat your comments into the chat window and submit any questions you have for our speakers in that Q&A window. I'll do my best to address any comments throughout, and we'll save your questions for the end of the event during our Q&A time. I also encourage you to share the information you received today with your colleagues and network on social media. Please use that handle Matrix LMS and the hashtag TI webinars so we're able to track your contribution to the conversation. And when the program ends, you'll notice a short evaluation survey has popped open in your browser. We would greatly welcome your feedback about the content, speaker, topics for future webinars, anything else you might like to share. And as always, today's event is being recorded and it will be archived on trainingindustry.com. You'll be receiving a follow-up email from us that will include a link to that on-demand program that you can review again later or share with a team member who may not have been able to join today. Now, if this is your first webinar with us, which I know several of you it is, a special welcome goes out to you. Training Industry exists to support the learning leader. We offer timely and insightful information on the business of learning through a variety of channels like today's webinar, as well as through website, magazine articles, research reports, referral services, our podcasts, our courses designed specifically for current and aspiring L&D leaders. We offer tons of resources for training managers across the globe. You can learn more at trainingindustry.com. Now, to get us started, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers, Alexia Sanchez and Susan Adams. Alexia is an EdTech specialist and instructional design expert with years of experience working with organizations worldwide to help them implement effective training strategies. Alexia takes pride in assisting clients with their onboarding processes and is passionate about using education transformation to improve employee achievement. And Susan Adams brings with her over 20 years of instructional design experience, working directly with faculty in higher education at both community colleges and universities. At Dragonfly Transformative Health Journeys, she guides strategic design processes with subject matter experts to implement appropriate instructional practices, consider interactive touchpoints, contextualize student personas, and develop a deployment plan. Susan and Alexia, it's so wonderful to have you with us. I know you've got some great content in store for us, so I'm going to hand things off to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, Elizabeth. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. It's great to be speaking with you all today. Thank you for taking time out and being here. And thank you to Susan for joining us and sharing some learning and development strategies that have proven successful at Dragonfly Transformative Health Journey.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much, Alexia.
So let us get this started. And today we'll be looking at different items. We're going to talk about what just-in-time training is and how it can help you enhance your training programs. We will also talk about how to implement just-in-time training in your current training programs, meaning that we won't suggest you to go back and redesign the whole thing. You can already implement some strategies, some upskilling and reskilling strategies for your employees, and also some design strategies that will help you create a digital learning space for your users. So let us start talking about what just-in-time training is. So just-in-time comes from a methodology, a management method that was created by Toyota, specifically by Taichi Ono. And it was a resource management. So basically what happened in Toyota is that people, all of the employees were losing a lot of time looking for different inventories. So basically the system said only add what they really need to have in there. You don't need to have excessive materials. So based on that, just-in-time training is the purpose of offering to your employees the right information at the right moment and at the right place. So what does this mean? The right information is going to be the answers to the questions that your staff might be having, and at the right moment and at the right place refers to having an accessible material, because not all people will have access to a computer round the clock. So you cannot allow them just to go back into the computer, lose all of the time, and then go back. So perhaps you can think of an employee trying to answer to a client's question, and they don't have the information right there. So at the right moment, at the right place means that you will making content accessible through a resource that will also allow them to easily search for their answers. So perhaps if you're working with an LMS such as Matrix, you can utilize a mobile device, you can tag a resource, or you can also offer them social support. So just-in-time training will help us support the flexible and hybrid training and working environments that we're facing right now. So it's kind of like delivering on-demand training to your employees, but it's also going to offer a more humane, centralized focus. It's going to also encourage the creation of materials that they have created, employee-made materials such as personalized toolkits, so that we can add assets that will be relevant and meaningful to not only their work missions and goals, but also to that specific person. So that is going to be just-in-time training. Now, just-in-time training approach is also going to offer many benefits when it comes to training. However, the main ones would be that they speed up the learning process. And this is because it will facilitate the acquisition of knowledge through comprehensive and digestible content. You won't have a lot of information, only what it is needed, so that users can answer their questions. And we will also additionally deliver some other content in a variety of formats. It's not only going to be through in the course. So imagine that user going through the multiple courses, sections, quizzes. No, you can also offer them in different formats. So aside from just within the course, perhaps you will also give them a PDF or some other handout for them. And additionally, another benefit is that it will enhance worker and workplace productivity. And this is because just-in-time training will improve the accuracy from the user, because what it will do is that it will allow the user to quickly apply that knowledge by making it make them have a higher retention rate. And therefore, you will also allow your users to have long-term knowledges, and it will help them enhance their productivity. Additionally, another benefit is that it is going to be easy to update content, because it's going to be only the information that they need. So you can also search for them easily and then update it. So that will also keep your workforce up to date, and therefore you will be preparing for a future-ready workforce. Another benefit is that we will make it learning on the go. That means that it will be anytime, anywhere, because you're going to make your content accessible, and you will also allow them to participate and therefore become more engaged in all of their professional development. And finally, another benefit is that we will increase employee engagement, and that is because you're giving them a voice. You're going to also allow participation from them, and you will give them the sense of accomplishment through multiple social support items that we will further discuss on this. So in here, we need to find a way to make viable the much talked flexibility right now in the markets. It's been like 1 year, more than 1 year past the pandemic, and all of the companies, training and development companies, are talking about flexibility. There's been much that has been talking about that, such as having webinars, articles that we think about flexibility being the response, the effective response to the pandemic and the new normal. So aside from just having that flexibility item, I would also motivate to talk about employee driven, because we need to make it a centralized training that goes around or revolves around the employee, because we need to really be more empathetic to our employees. They have been working from home for more than a year, and it's been a difficult transition. So we really need to offer that approach to our employees. And this will be done as well through a just-in-time approach that will offer multiple choice points for engaging with materials. So it's not only going through the course, through the quizzes, through the assignments, but it's also giving them multiple other ways in which they can engage. So they can perhaps have access to a forum, or perhaps it's also going to be through a wiki page, a chat, commonly shared Google documents. And this will also allow you to offer just-in-time peer support and collaboration. Think about when you are at the office. When you have a question, what do you do? What you do is that you go back with your colleagues and you ask, or if your boss is around there, or you have any leader that you can ask them questions, you just go and ask that question. So we need to adapt it now to this remote work or hybrid work, and do the same in here. We're going to offer support and collaboration amongst peers by offering those type of spaces, kind of like a chat, a group, a pod. And additionally, we're also going to provide digital spaces for emergent learning. So therefore, what you will do is like a long-term sustainable learning, and you're also going to make it friendlier for your users. And that will take me into our first polling question. And the question is, please select your current work environment. You should be able to see right now a pop-up window with the choices. Please select one.
All right, everyone, if you haven't done so yet, go ahead, take a moment to respond to this poll question. Let us know what your current work environment is. Are you entirely on site? Maybe you're entirely virtual, maybe you're hybrid, or something else. And if it's something else, let us know in the chat. Give you maybe 3 more seconds with this poll window open. 3, 2, and 1. All right, here are our results.
Perfect. Look at that, Susan. So we have 48% working in a flexible model.
Yeah, I think a lot of employees I'm noticing are giving options and choices, especially kind of in this transition back. I'm noticing that that's what's happening in a lot of ways. And I bet you this is going to change in the next 6 months. There may be some more requirements to come back to the office, I've heard as well, kind of in the ether there.
Yeah, that's right. I was reading the other day. It was a survey made by PricewaterhouseCoopers, and it said that given right now the different choices, most of their employees would like to work with a flexible model, and that also proved to make the percentage of productivity go higher. It was like, I think, like up to a 34%. So users, employees are equipping to be more productive when they're given the opportunity to decide how they're going to work right now.
That doesn't surprise me at all. I know I feel more productive having the flexibility and the ease.
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. And we will also like to ask you to please share what is working and what is not working in your current working environment. So please open that chat and share what is working, what you think it's not working right now under your current working environments, please.
Yeah, so whether it's fully on site or virtual or a little bit of hybrid with this new normal, what are some things that you're liking about it, or what's really challenging? I think it's helpful for us to just kind of get the landscape of what's happening in our workspaces. So you can feel free to enter that into the chat as we go, and we can respond to it. Here we go.
Yeah, less distractions. I really relate to that. Less distractions working from home. More focused. I see that as a trend. Yeah, I think that has like an up and down, working from home as well. When you're at the office, yes, you have your answers to any questions because you could just ask your colleagues, but as well, being from home allows you to be more focused. That's right.
I also think it's important. I think in some ways that it is a privilege to be able to work at home and be focused, especially when you don't have kids. So some of the challenges I've heard, especially in the higher ed space, is folks working from home have actually been really challenged because their kids were not in school, and they had to accommodate and even get their kids logged in for class. And sometimes that can be a distraction. So I just wanted to recognize the importance of accommodating for that as an employer.
Yes.
And also manufacturing, you have to be on site, right? So obviously we've noticed and understand that there's been some real challenges there in our production streams and the impact there that I think has been important to address and will continue to be important to address.
Yeah, true. That's right. And Liana is sharing with us something that I think that it's also important to consider, and that is the culture, the organizational culture, because she says, I feel like my learning has been stunted. I was a new hire when the pandemic began, and I feel like I missed out on learning by seeing and hearing around the office. That is true. And I think that is why being flexible is at the workplace is something really good, that you can also open and give your employees a voice so that they can select what works best for them.
Yeah, and I think there's been two comments about, the power of unplanned spontaneous connections that can happen, at the water cooler, which typically has been said. So we're excited to show you today some ways to maybe play with that a little bit in digital spaces and also some intention setting. Even though it seems antithetical to spontaneity, there's some ways we can play with that possibility.
Perfect. So thank you very much for sharing those comments with us. We're going to move on into the next slide, and we're going to talk about how we can make it basically viable, having this new remote model. So because it is here to stay, having that flexibility or hybrid or even completely remote work. So the only way to make it sustainable, make it feasible to happen, is that we also adapt our training programs to it. Because when the pandemic hit us, it was just a matter of adapting all of the work into a remote mode, and also the training, but we really didn't plan the training according to those new needs. And you know that because it has been a major change, the culture of the organizations also changed, and those were also affected. So we need to as well adapt our training and development programs accordingly. We're not going to continue with a one-size-fits-all type of training, because also working remotely or working also in a flexible or hybrid model, it's also going to make you work a little bit more. I read somewhere that people are working up to 20% more when they're working from home. So we also need to keep that in mind when we're planning our training and development trainings, and we need to somehow make it effective. So the way to make it effective is to make sure that users, that learners and your staff are really appropriating their knowledges so that they can apply it now, because they need quick solutions. They need to quickly understand the content. And the beauty about just-in-time training approach is that it will also offer a significant learning. And that is because it will allow users to make connections from the knowledge to the use of that. So it's going to become an innate learning. And that is, for example, when they have a need. So as soon as they have a need and they have access to a quick database where they can browse through those, they will now learn the information from it. Keep in mind that the information that they should have, it's not going to be long content. It should be short content that it is only focused on that. Then they can come back, apply it really well, and then the information will be internalized for the users, for your users. So it's going to become a long-term knowledge. And keep in mind that also the brain learns at its best when the brain identifies that something is useful or important. So you have to make it an important or useful fact, all of those skills and new knowledges. So there's from Edgar Dales, he was the management manager, and he created in the 1960s this principle that says that people retain more information doing rather than just listening or hearing. So in here, you'll see the pyramid that at the top, you have people that will only retain 10% of what they read, 20% from what they've heard, 30% of what they see. But when you start mixing those options, you get that 50% will be retained if they get the opportunity to see and hear, 70% if they have the opportunity to say and write, but 90% when they do. So when you apply the knowledge, your brain will actually retain it, because what you're doing is that you're allowing opportunities of connecting thoughts and ideas. So you will be allowing your staff to associate knowledges when they apply it. So we're going to try to offer opportunities of action where they can try and achieve something, plus the sense of that they are being successful and that they are applying their knowledges. So what just-in-time training will do is that it will bring more opportunities to apply the knowledge. And that will take me over here into the place where they can master skills. It's not only quizzes that they need to memorize. And in these levels of planning, we can also enhance the engagement in this with some design strategies. For example, as curating content and presenting it in a simple and easy to digest chunks, which I think Susan has been able to master in her programs. So Susan, I'm going to pass it over to you. So if you can kindly tell us a little bit more about this, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to sort of showcase today a online yoga class where we have right now, we have about 100 students and I would say 65 to 70 actively showing up at a live course session on Saturdays. But we wanted to have a very robust asynchronous activities and also engagement options for the students to connect with each other. So we set up, prior to coming to a live session, comprehensive pre-recorded video lectures. We call them talks, and done by the instructor themselves. And they're about 15 to 20 minutes long, although I had to pull him back a little bit. Often they want to go on forever and ever, but it's important for the cognitive load to be really actually 6 to 8 minutes. And we sort of try to break them up. But he has such a great following that we allowed him to go to 20-minute lectures. He also did guided practice videos, and it was important to distinguish that from a talk so that students understood, I'm going to get my yoga mat out now. I'm going to be in a different, I need to be in a space where I can engage, and I'm going to be guided through actual movement and practices. So that was also a value add to the students in understanding they're going to have a comprehensive experience watching a talk and then an actual application and guided practice video for applying what they're learning. And then there was curated readings, and we tried to give those to not be any more than an hour per week. That was important just in terms of the amount of work we were promoting and saying that was going to be needed to be successful and stay on top of things for each week. And then we had a reflective activity, and that was guiding questions. And I always ask my content experts to offer guiding questions for their lecture, and often some guiding questions for the readings. And then we pull from those guiding questions for an assignment. Sometimes they say, oh, I just want the students to choose one or two of the guiding questions from the lecture or the readings for this week's assignment. Or they might summarize and synthesize and come up with kind of a larger question that they can choose from for the reflection activity. So as the design process goes, it's a nice way to sort of set the stage for having a menu of options to pull from for activities. And as it says here, you can take that reflective question and align it to an actual live conversation. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the Peerpod design that we did, where they then would take that Learning Learnal prompt and actually voice it and discuss it together with their peers, as well as some other questions that could come up in terms of support in the Peerpod experience. And then we do have mini self-paced courses, sorry, just kind of going on here, that in addition to this very comprehensive course, the instructor offered a breath class. It was self-paced, it was very quick. We had 6 lessons and you could choose, and they weren't time-based. And each lesson was about 2 hours long. So it included a really quick lecture, a guided breathing practice, and then a reading. And he drew on that and kind of referred to that throughout the course itself. So that was nice, as well as a supplement to their commitment to being in a yoga practice. Breath is very important to that. So he wanted to have kind of a separate self-paced mini course that supported his class as well.
And now that you're in here, that you're saying about this mini self-paced courses, I really like to also share with our attendees that mini self-paced courses or micro-learning courses are also a strategy for just-in-time training. It's not the same thing. There's been a misconception that micro-learning is part of, that it is just-in-time training. And well, the difference is that microlearning also considers another set of different items where users can participate in, as Susan was mentioning, that she's offering all of these different items, aside from just offering the content or the input for the users. And that takes us as well to a second design strategy, and that is the social and emergent learning, which I think is a really useful approach that Susan has been able to master.
Yeah, so it's really important when you think about self-paced, how do we give your employees or your students agency, right? So the self-paced gives them a lot of agency to be flexible, to choose when they want to engage in the content and engage in the activities. But there's also a lot of learning that can happen with your peers. And how do we create spaces for that to happen? And when you can create a container, whether it's live or digital, it's an opportunity to co-create knowledge together, to idea generate, to inspire. Obviously, we have working groups with very important projects that they have to accomplish. But in the training environment, it's often great to just have peers to reflect with. So you'll notice that in our design for the yoga course, that's the direction that we went into with our Peerpods. So these are some of the theory behind the social emergent learning. Is there's opportunities for resource sharing, co-creation of knowledge, Q&A, so easy to find concepts. If you do a Q&A digital space that's searchable, that's super helpful. And then chats and forums that allow for quick answers to questions. A lot of people are using Slack, but other opportunities for that to happen in the forums, and encouraging employees to subscribe to the forum so they can see updates that come therein.
Yeah, and that is great because offering these opportunities to have that social support, it's great because basically what you will be doing is what they didn't have um, working remotely was that part of communication amongst peers. So they wouldn't be able to answer their questions really quick as fast as now that you are adding this Q&A and chats and forums. Now they can do it, and that also brings that sense of community.
So how do you set the stage for that? So I'm going to give you a brief tour of a course, but before we go into there, just wanted to highlight what our Peerpod digital space includes. And what we did is inside of Matrix, we have the lessons, but then we created groups and we identified a group space for each Peerpod. And inside of that, we offered them a group agreement where they got to co-modify that as a group so that they set the stage for building trust and setting boundaries. And, what is the intention here that we're going to agree to help each other gain support in gaining or reaching our learning goals. We also provided an article on strategic questioning. So helping, how can I actually keep this conversation going? And an article on how to give and receive feedback. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and show you what that looks like. I think I have to have you stop sharing, Alexia. There we go. So, okay, let's see here. There we go. All right, can everybody see the lessons? Are we set there, Alexia?
Yes, we can see it.
Great.
Looks not really nice.
Yeah, so this is our Into the Depths course. It's a very strong community that's very committed to Ty Landrum, who's a great yoga instructor. So we set up lessons and we put them in this format here. And I'm just going to actually, before I go into the Peerpods, pop into the lessons itself to show you that one of the great things you can do with a course design is to have consistency of content from lesson to lesson. Now, of course, the first lesson, we had an introduction video and we had a syllabus and a welcome page. But in each lesson subsequent, we tried to stay consistent. So you'll see that in lesson 2 and lesson 3, there's always going to be an introduction where we outline what's expected and the learning outcomes for the lesson. There's the talk. In this case, there's a guided meditation. Sometimes it's a guided actual yoga practice. Then you'll see the readings there and then a learning journal activity. And so that's what they're going to see pretty much in every single lesson subsequent. So they get into a nice rhythm, and that helps with cognitive overload and also just supporting students in their digital space there. So going back to the start of the lessons here, you'll notice on the left-hand side, I've renamed the group tool Peerpods. That's what we decided to call it at Dragonfly. And so I'm going to pop right into one of the Peerpods, and we have actually 10 of them. And we tried to go for no more than 5 to 8 students per pod, because we understand just from a learning standpoint that interaction inside of a live session or inside of an asynchronous discussion is really going to be best and more effective with no more than 5 to 8 students. So each digital space here is given a welcome page. So it's a large class. We're also a large organization at Dragonfly, and we just don't have the staffing to facilitate the peer groups, right? So we needed to set the stage for them to self-organize. And this is something that has proved entirely successful. I was a little nail biting at the beginning, and we have seen so much appreciation for what we set up for the Peerpod. So you'll notice here that we encourage them to use the Doodle, which is a great free app to self-organize. When are they actually going to meet? Are they going to meet every week, every 2 weeks? We really gave them the agency to decide as a group how they wanted to do that. So it was best to have someone volunteer to be a leader in the Peerpod, to set up that doodle poll and then synthesize it to decide when they're going to meet. We also let them know that they have a whole resources area, which I already explained, but I'll go into there in a second to give what those 3 documents are. But then we also said, during your first meeting, go ahead and introduce yourself and ask these questions. What do you see as your inner and outer challenge, your growing edge? Now, I worked with Ty on this, the content expert. So he was helping me, and I was wanting to understand who is his audience. So this languaging around growing edge worked for him. Obviously, you would use different questions for your context and your environment. And how can the group best support you? What a great question to ask in a first initial meeting of a peer group. Again, building that trust, setting that up. And because it's self-guided, they're given already the steps of what to do. And the groups just flew after this. They understood what to do, and things just happened naturally because they were given this initial spark really to get connected. We also suggested to set up a group agreement to help support the group as a whole. And then, like I said earlier, use the week's journal prompt to spark your continued conversation. But again, these are options. So it might be a really highly effective group, and they might say, I have a challenge this week and I'd rather speak about that than the journal prompt, and here's why. And so again, opening that up for the students to self-pace themselves in whatever emerges with the group. But in order to support that, right, they need help knowing how to communicate well in a digital environment. And also with each other. So when they click on resources, you'll see there that they have a Peerpod agreement. It's a downloadable Google Doc. We give instructions and an agreement example, right? Confidentiality, how do we communicate? And they would each go through what this would look like for them. What does it mean to be respectful and to have sort of a code of conduct, right? Again, they're all adults. You assume this happens, but boy, it really helps to set the stage to be really intentional. Oh, I need to take responsibility for how I'm showing up as a group member here. So that's why we set that up. And then the next was giving and receiving feedback. And this was a guide that we found. I forgot the author now. I should have them on my brain here. But yeah, so a quick little one-pager primer for giving and receiving feedback. And then we give them a website on strategic questioning. And again, you can choose whatever tools, whatever your mission and values are as an organization. What are some ways that you are looking for your organization to create the kinds of culture that you want? These are just examples of ways to set the stage for that.
And I think it's great. I mean, we have already participants who are asking about this resources, Susan. So okay. It's great because you're actually motivating users, your attendees as well, to participate in these groups. You're opening for communication. So it's not actually just throwing in their input for the users, but you're actually engaging them so that they can also perform their own output in there. So it's their own made materials. They're applying what they are learning, what they're seeing, and they're also adding more ideas into that, because that is the whole purpose of having groups, right? To share ideas and to then empower what you already have as an idea. So, which is great. Mm-hmm. And congratulations for this.
Oh, thank you. And I will be honest, there have been a few challenges, but it was great to, most of the groups were able to move right into this. And there were a few that saying, hey, Susan, nobody's showing up. Can you help? So I, had to swoop in a few times and say, okay, is this a group configuration that's going to work? Are you sure you want to actually be in this Peerpod? We do set up an expectation in the syllabus that states, if you want to do a Peerpod, here's the expectation that we have, that you're going to show up on time, and here's the level of commitment. So I'm able to fall back on that when I need to do an intervention, such as nobody showing up, which can happen. And that's, par for the course, but having a point person on staff that's going to be able to help field those types of questions or those types of supports that some of the groups may need is also important to design as you set this up.
Yeah, but I think it's great because you're not making them to go through compulsory items. So they already have plastered in there what are their goals, and as well they have a group agreement. So that makes also a sense of commitment into here. So I think it's great. And you're not trying to force something so it feels natural for them.
Right. And I also wanted to just speak to a learning that came up with it. Is you'll notice here that there is a forum area for just that Peerpod group, and Matrix offers that in the group tool. And you'll see that there's not much activity, right, in this particular Peerpod. But that makes sense because really the Peerpod, the way we designed it, was for a live discussion. And that's where people are putting their energy. But you'll notice, and I'm going to go back to the course itself, we did do an all class forum. Okay, so some people chose not to actually be inside of a Peerpod, and we all opened up, and you'll see we have 17 discussions. We've been open for 5 weeks now. And I'm just going to open up the conversation here, and we had a lot of activity, right? So this was the whole class, all 70 students posting topics, asking questions, and some of the conversations, I will say, have been super deep. So it was just a learning. And again, it was important to provide both digital spaces for the asynchronous forums to see what would land. And now I've learned that the all class forum works really well in this particular context. But having both is great, and being ready and flexible to maybe shift, that it's okay that there's not a lot of activity in the asynchronous forum for the group area, but there is for the all class area. So again, thinking through what is my audience, what are the needs, and am I being clear about what's expected and what's available for that emergent learning to happen?
That's great, because you're also driving some people into the course action and then also into the group. So you're having activity for both items, meaning that there is an engagement to the general system in here. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, Susan. I'm going to go back and share the slides. So, okay, so that also takes me into the next design strategy, and that is making content relevant and meaningful. I mean, right now, people are continuing to ask about those introductory documents that you shared, and I think that those are great. You shared 3, but all 3 are relevant. All 3 are making a noise within your users, and they're actually putting those into action. So I'm going to let you tell us a little bit more about the content and how it's you're making it become meaningful to your learners.
Right. Well, the beautiful thing about having those resources at the beginning is it really does fit with just in time, right? So the first week, they might not be thinking that I need to read an article on strategic questioning. I'm just trying to actually consume content right now and have a learning experience. But week 2, 3, 4, they might be in a rhythm, getting really comfortable with their group, maybe feeling like, oh, I can now speak and actually ask questions. I'm going to go back to that article that Susan presented a week ago. And so now it's just in time for me. I'm getting to that resource now. I know it's there, and I want to start being more present in my group. I haven't been so much before, and that's a learning goal. So that would be an example there. Again, you don't want to give too much information, but contextualizing that, right? So I put those 3 resources inside of the group tools specifically. I mentioned them in the syllabus. I mentioned them in orientation, but where they sit in the digital space was important because that's where it's going to be relevant at that moment and meaningful for them at that moment and to access that in that space. So that's an example of helping find things that are going to be relevant and meaningful and just in time. Another strategy, I want to make sure I'm good on time. Yeah, I am. That when I think about something meaningful, right, it's about my own personal life experience and how can that be brought to the table of my learning, right? So in higher education, we do that a lot. We encourage faculty to make assignments be relevant and meaningful to even the community around you, right? If it's a math equation, could it be a math equation about the sidewalk right outside my house or the park, right? Or statistics, right? Then the student is going to be much more motivated to complete that math equation if it's something that's going to help the community that they live in. So that's what we mean by meaningful content, right? So asking for that connection to your own personal life experience, being able to bring that to the table, not just even in professional skills, but your own personal interests. That's where you're going to see motivation increase.
True, that's right. And I think this would also answer one question that we had on the chat from Peter. He was asking, the main problem is how to optimize the training with less times. That is happening right now in my country. So I think this should also answer that question, because you can target content. It's only answering the question, only what it is involved you're not going to have an excess of information, because users or learners will get lost. So it's basically first the essential skills, and that is what Susan has been doing. She first answered the question of how can I start participating? How can I, what ideas can I add in there? And that is actually going to optimize the use of the time of the learners, instead of going through thousands of topics or of the information that should be there. So that is going to take me into also inviting you to share with us some ways that you can create a sense of belonging for your employees with throughout your content. That is going to help you as well to analyze what is the most important content that you should be sharing in your training and development programs, and as well in your social emergent learning groups. And this also takes us to a beautiful idea that Susan created, and that is the personalized learning toolkit. Susan, can you talk more about this, please?
Well, this is kind of a new idea that I'm playing with right now, but also have seen it a few times. So I don't actually have an example to show you, so I'm going to verbally explain it. But if you can visualize what would be like, we call them digital goodie bags or digital toolkits. So a resource like where I put those 3 resources inside of the group tool, but something personalized. So helping employees and students with some kind of a template, a document that asks them the question, what did you learn today? And what is still challenging that you need clarification on? Those might be 2 questions that you encourage people to ask themselves for 3 or 4 minutes after each training, or as part of a self-paced training. And name it, okay, when we showed the video on X, what was the most salient point for you? Another great question to ask to guide a toolkit creation is, what from what you learned today do you plan to implement, or do you plan to experiment with? So really helping, again, our brains are poised to respond to questions, right? And to take action steps when they have a well thought out question. So that's what I think about in helping people when you put a training together, have a handout that actually is a note-taking handout, right? That has those sort of those questions that help people get to action steps and help people make connections to their own prior knowledge. And I guess that plays in with the second one, which is encouraging reflection and insight captured. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you who do not know what Matrix LMS platform looks like, we have this locker feature that will allow all of the users to have a personal space where they can create their journals, or perhaps upload any documents or files.
Right. I forgot to say that our journal assignment that you saw in those lessons, I invite them to put their journal entry into their locker in Matrix. But some people like to handwrite it, and some people have, like to do it in their own Google file. Again, no problem. But it's nice, again, as an organization to say, but we also have a digital space for you. And they're able to share locker items in their portfolio, which can then allow for collaboration and feedback to happen as well in their learning. The last strategy is a little bit different. It's called collaborative note-taking. And one of my favorite organizations is Online Learning Consortium, OLC, and I learned this from them last year. And what they did during conference presentations, but this could be done during trainings, is you put a shared document link in the chat, and that you create what's a table, and you invite people to put their name in. So you have 2 columns, their name on the left-hand column, and then a note-taking space on the right-hand column. And you invite them to take notes, but then if somebody's taking a note in the first row, then somebody else takes a note in the second row. So you find your own space, and if there isn't a row, you can add one, and they show you how to do that. And it's really powerful to watch your colleagues take notes in real time. So for example, I would be taking notes and hearing what Alexia is saying, but then Alina might come in and take a note that is something I didn't think was important, but I was really curious about that, and I can actually comment on Alina's notes. And then by the end of the training, you have this really nice document of insights, questions, thoughts, ideas that are all in one space, and you all got to see each other. And that becomes an asset that you can then upload to a training area or have as an asset for future trainings. And then of course the presenters can look and say, oh, this is what they learned, or here's the idea that got generated. I'm a big fan of collaborative shared documents such as Google Drive or OneDrive allows you to do that as well.
Yeah, and it's great because you're not only using documents as a reference, you're also allowing them to participate. And this type of documents you can also embed directly within Matrix LMS so that users can don't have to go elsewhere or outside of the platform. And that will take us into this other slide where we'll talk about intentional and multiple means of collaboration.
Yeah, so in summary here, we've got the collaborative note-taking as an idea, reflective journals that aligned with professional goals and competencies. So again, thinking about those reflective questions, really, what competencies, what learning goals are needed for this particular training or overarching if you are working with just the evaluation of an employee. The social learning aspect, I think we've offered that Peerpod option. I did see in the chat, which I really loved, is a daily lounge on WebEx, which is fantastic. Just a space where it's a lounge digitally that anybody can pop into and hang out with. I think that's great for remote learners. And then collaborative documents in general. I think really increasing employees' digital fluency for that, especially in the knowledge sector, is a great strategy and just a great tech tool to start utilizing and leveraging in bigger and stronger ways. Repositories, really helpful. Again, having a place where everybody knows to go to get the information. Naming conventions are going to be important for repositories there. And then lockers and portfolios we just mentioned that Matrix offers, encouraging people to use those digital spaces right in where they're learning to be able to reference that and have that space be specific to their training is also helpful as well.
Thank you for that. So we're just now going to briefly go over some of the ideas that we mentioned over the past slides. So what just-in-time training is and what it is not. So it's going to be a selection of curated and relevant content that it is meaningful to the learners. It is not just a repository where you can add as many documents or files as you like around the topic, or it's not micro-learning courses itself. Micro-learning courses can be a strategy within a just-in-time training approach. It is also social and emergent learning, intentional collaborative spaces to share questions and knowledge specific to on-the-job tasks. It is non-moderated forums nor collaboration spaces open to all topics. So we need to motivate users into engaging into communications, but also to support their peers. It is accessible and easy to find content. So we have materials in multiple formats, and you can also tag content for the ease of search. And it is implementing collaborative spaces and curated materials in accessible libraries. It's not only through the course itself, and you do not have to redesign your learning and development programs. You can already start implementing some ideas. So now we're going to open the floor for some questions. I believe we already have some.
I was just typing an answer to Eileen. Great question around how do you motivate and reinforce participation, in particular when there's a work project that just swoops in and needs to get done. I just wanted to address that. I think having a monthly check-in that's specific to professional learning and the professional training that offers an activity and some time for reflection. I mean, sometimes the gift of time is the best thing, where you're required to come to this hour-long session, but we're going to give you 4 or 5 minutes to actually quietly and put a little Spotify music on to allow people to explore a particular question, to reorient to what their goals are, pick up where they left off. And also ask, what support do you need to get this done? And how can we find ways to support you in particular in achieving those goals? So those are some thoughts there for you, Eileen.
Yeah, and I would also like to add, embedding or utilizing as well some other free tools that you might have, like for example, Padlets or something that might motivate for participation. There's this one app that allows you to do like a check-in with your users. So basically, you will ask your users to type in a couple of words or feelings that they are feeling right now, and then it will create a commonly Padlet where all of these words will be shown, and they will show like the bigger are the most common or most frequently typed in words as well. So I think that there are many tools that you can also utilize. They don't have to be as well. You don't have to pay additionally for this. There are many other free tools that you can also implement.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexia. Susan. Hey, everybody. We have a couple more minutes for questions. So pop open your Q&A window, type those in. Your next question is from Amy. Have you introduced gamification learning into just-in-time learning?
We have done so. We have in Matrix LMS, we offer as well gamification, so we can gamify not only courses but also groups. So you can gamify and award badges, points as well upon the participation of the users.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexia. Question from Roland. How do you motivate employees to join in on professional development online when it hasn't been a part of the company culture previously?
Yeah, I think it's really important to set the stage when it hasn't been there with a really robust live experience, if that can be scheduled. Sometimes that can be hard. You might have to schedule different sessions to accommodate schedules to sort of repeat it. But during that live session, to actually have participants go into those digital spaces as part of the activity during the live session helps a lot with motivation and just comfort level. Oh, here's the forum. Oh, here's the strategic questioning document. I didn't realize. Oh, this is helpful, because they're essentially being handheld during that live session. But it can also be really fun to like get into a shared doc during a live session and watch people do that collaborative note taking, right? And then that can be adopted because they've actually practiced it together during the live session. And then the other answer to that too is really going back to that, what's relevant and meaningful for them, right? Like really allowing for them to show themselves, to declare who they are, to connect, who they are as a person to the purpose of the organization too, right? So why are they here? And sometimes that trust building and that getting to know each other can also really increase motivation in the beginning to say, oh, this is who I am and this is how what I'm doing fits in with a larger picture of our goals here as an organization. So that purpose alignment can also be a great strategy for helping increase motivation to do the professional development.
And Susan, you also mentioned that you have group leaders, right, in your Peerpods. So if you're doing also that, perhaps what you can do as well is to add those more experienced users as leaders as well, to keep them engaged and keep them participating as well.
And let them know they can rotate out of that too, so they don't feel burdened by it, right? So the idea is that, oh, you're really can show yourself here as a leader, but we want to let you know that we'd like to let others practice leading. So could you delegate or designate somebody else too? And that's a good strategy to keep it sustainable.
Awesome. We have time for maybe one more question. This one is from Elgene. Can you share any thoughts or advice on how to ensure the learners can still develop their metacognitive skills in the online learning environment?
Yeah, metacognitive skills. Alexa, do you want to hit that one or you want me to take it?
However you'd like.
Okay. Yeah, it's important to offer that reflection piece. And I think that's, and also being transparent, right? So there's a construct in higher education called transparent learning, TILT. I forget how the acronym stands for, but it's a way to say, here's why we're asking you to do this. And here is where we hope you're going to get to, or we intend for you to get to, and being super transparent about that. And that really helps people to go, oh, you're human too as my boss, or you're human too as the training director. So there's a rationale for the why. And then the second is contextualizing it. It's the why, but also we're going to contextualize it for your actual working groups. So I'm understanding that your projects are going to require you to be doing this type of work, and here's how this is going to work for you in that particular context. But I want you to understand all the other context of your colleagues as well. Again, that shows transparency, that shows the larger picture, so people can align with, again, what am I doing and where does it fit in with what other people are doing? So I'm just not staying in some kind of a silo. Well, none of that matters to me, right? So the more you can articulate that and repeatedly at every single session, just with a brief overview, is always helpful for that transparency and also metacognition.
I would also add to really try to add in their real world training opportunities, because I've seen many training programs that basically you put just the input of their questions, and just like a project, but you should also provide with more real world training opportunities, other types of assessments, and as Susan was mentioning, to align them to what are their goals and what is they are going to they can expect as a knowledge to come from those type of activities.
Awesome. Alexia, Susan, thank you so much for addressing these questions. Thank you for giving us such a helpful, informative session. So thanks for being here today.
My pleasure. Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, Alina, and Alexia.
Thank you all too as well. It's been a complete pleasure to be here.
All right, everybody, just a few closing remarks from me. Of course, I'd like to invite you all to join us for some upcoming training industry webinars. You can register for these programs, watch past events now at trainingindustry.com. And all of our webinars are pre-qualified for credit hours by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. CPTM is the Certified Professional in Training Management program that assists you in developing core competencies that will empower you to manage the future training needs of your organization. If you are a current or aspiring training manager, this is the certification for you. You can find more information about this at trainingindustry.com/CPTM. And of course, I invite you all to join us for the Fall Training Industry Conference and Expo, happening completely online this September. If you happen to join us in April, you know that TICE is the perfect conference to gain the knowledge, confidence, and connections you need to lead learning at your organization. Learn more at trainingindustry.com/TICE. Once again, thanks so much to today's speakers, Alexia and Susan, of course, to our sponsors, Cipher Learning, and thanks to all of you for being here today. Until next time, I'm Elizabeth Parker. I hope you all have a wonderful day.